Each sunset, as the sun's last rays cast gold hues on the church's stained glass windows, a little stray cat named Crimson would show up at the doorway and sit peacefully by the door's emerald green eyes stared inward, as if anticipating someone. When Father Michael eventually observed the odd behavior of the cat and learned the tragic truth about its nightly vigil, he was brought. What could have caused such devotion and grief in this small creature? It was a serene even, at the center of a charming little town where everyone knew one another by name, was St. Gabriel's Church was an old stone structure with walls covered in ivy and a tall bell that rang out each hour for the residents of the town. The church served as a haven as well as a place of worship. Father Michael is a good-hearted priest who is a source of consolation and hope during difficult times. Had been the priest of St. Gabriel's for more than 10 years, and he was in his late 40s. Days were devoted to preaching, making confessions, and attending to his parishioners' needs, even though his work was satisfying. But there was an emptiness in his heart that he hardly ever acknowledged, not even to himself. After the evening mass on an autumn evening, Father Michael saw a slight movement close to the church as he secured the doors. There was a stray sitting peacefully, shivering in the cool air. Cat with smoky gray and white fur and eyes that shone brightly even. The cat appeared weak in the last of the light, as if it had survived many difficult nights without a home father. Michael hesitated and murmured softly, "Hello there," with his keys dangling in his hand. The cat didn't run, but it also didn't approach. Instead, it just sat with the voice that carried the warmth that had soothed so many. The priest lingered for a time, uncertain of what to do, staring at him with an almost human intensity. Was not very good with animals, and the cat didn't seem to want to go. "So you're free to," he muttered, "stay," before returning to the rectory that evening. As he got ready for bed, he couldn't get the picture out of his mind. The following evening, as Father Michael made his way to the church for Mass, the little animal was waiting at the church steps. Was back, sitting exactly where it had been, its tiny frame huddled against the, this time, freezing wind. He brought a container of milk and gently placed it next to the cat. He said, kneeling down, "You must." Father Michael. The hungry cat paused before moving closer and sniffing the milk before gulping it down. Observed silently, with a slight smirk on his face. "You're tenacious, aren't you?" Replied, "What are you waiting for?" As the days stretched into weeks, the cat started to appear outside the church on a regular basis. Would show up each evening as the sun was setting and remain until the church doors were secured. An elderly woman asked one of the parishioners, "Is it your father?" as their curiosity reached a height. Father Michael shook his head after Mass that evening, saying, "No, it's a stray, although it seems to have made this their home." But even as it got to know Father Michael more, the cat stayed aloof, never letting. It would consume the food he gave it, and then resume its silent vigil by the church doors if anyone touched it. Its regularity had an almost hallowed quality, as if it were watching over the cathedral or waiting for someone who never. When Father Michael arrived, he became curious about why the cat had picked St. Gabriel's and what kept returning night after night. He concluded he had to learn the truth As the days went by, the town's residents began to quietly wonder about the cat's existence, and parishioners would stay after Mass gazing at the adorable animal sitting on the church steps, and some even started bringing modest gifts, bits of food, blankets, and toys, but the cat stayed distant in spite of the increased attention. Father Michael couldn't help but observe how the cat's undivided focus was the church and its routine. Vigil sparked a conversation in the neighborhood. It's almost like it's reminding us of something. Mrs. Campbell, a widowed baker, had lit candles in the church devotional hall on numerous lonely nights. Perhaps even Faith, the priest, nodded reflectively. He had personally witnessed how the cat had evolved into a representation of silent power, and, for the younger generation, perseverance was a mystery, but for the older generation it was consoling. But Father Michael saw it as a question that needed to be answered. What was he waiting for? Father Michael, one evening, as the season's first snowflakes started to fall, he stayed late after Mass, sitting in the pews with his coat securely fastened outside, determined to maintain watch. The church and the frigid hours didn't prevent the cat from sitting in its normal position. gradually became quiet, save for the sporadic creak of the ancient wooden timbers. Father Michael leaned forward, his heart accelerating. The small creature rose when the cat stirred just before midnight. The priest was attracted by its feet as they crept softly toward the side of the church. The cat guided him to a tiny alcove under a stained glass window, but he was cautious to maintain his distance. A tiny wooden crucifix, worn by time, was tucked away among the snow and fallen leaves. Father knelt down and brushed it away, the rubble to uncover the inscription, which read, "Dear Rebecca Grace." A flood of emotion swept over him from 1995 to 2010. Rebecca Grace had been a brilliant and vivacious town girl who often attended Sunday school. She tragically died more than 10 years ago, following a sudden. Her family had moved away soon after, unable to handle the reminders of her illness, and the town had been in great mourning. Father Michael, who had lost them, looked at the crucifix and then back at the cat. "Are you here?" The cat sat quietly as he mumbled something for her, his voice halting in his throat. Father Michael felt a chill, not from the weather, but from the green eyes that stared at the cross as though in recognition. Father Michael informed the parish the following day that he had come to the conclusion that this was no accident. "Counsel, it seems like this tiny being is keeping an eye on her memory," he stated, or perhaps serving as a reminder that news gets around fast, and that the tale of the cat and Rebecca's cross won people over. For several residents of the town, it served as a moving reminder of how fleeting life is. Others saw it as a reminder to reaffirm their faith. Even though the cat stayed the same despite the newfound attention, before heading to the Our Father, it would return to the church each evening and sit peacefully at the doors. As a sign of remembering, Michael started placing a tiny candle near Rebecca's crucifix and lighting it every night. Although the priest couldn't get rid of the thought that there was more to the tale. Why had the cat picked this particular location and this cross? Was it just a coincidence, or did Father Michael have a deeper meaning? Michael couldn't stop thinking about the more he thought about the relationship between the cat and Rebecca's cross, the more questions came to mind. Had the cat just discovered the location by accident, or was it pulled there by a more profound, inexplicable force that compelled him to delve deeper into Rebecca's tale in the hopes that it might clarify the cat's enigmatic devotion the following morning? When Father Michael went to the local library to go through old documents and news stories, he discovered a collection. Numerous articles concerning Rebecca, her family, and the tragedy that had struck them. The Grace family had been incredibly. Rebecca had been especially active in the church, frequently volunteering and going to services with others. Love animals, and according to one source, she was known for saving stray cats. She would constantly say, according to a comment from her mother, Rebecca believed that all animals had souls. As he read her comments, the priest's heart ached because the creature deserved kindness. Could it be that the stray cat was now paying a visit? Rebecca had taken care of the church, but the timing didn't seem plausible. No cat could survive so long. But the behavior of the cat defied explanation, and they were keen to find out more. Father Michael went in search of the elderly Mrs. Hensley, Grace's previous neighbor. When Father Michael described his visit to Mrs. Liv, she was still living in the same home a few streets from the church. Recognizing that Rebecca was such a sweet youngster, Mrs. Hensley's eyes brightened. Hensley claimed that she had a talent with animals and that her voice was tinted with nostalgia, particularly cats. One in particular, a gray tabby named Clover, loved her and followed her around. Father Michael bent forward, asking if he knew what had happened to Clover after Rebecca had passed Mrs. Hensley. She hesitated, her face obscured by her parents' hasty departure, as I recall. "I always thought someone would take Clover in, Father, after seeing her wandering the streets for a while before she vanished." The latest stray didn't look like Clover yet, and Michael left Mrs. Hensley's house with more questions than answers. Could the cat be a descendant of Rebecca's cherished pet attracted to the church by some hereditary link? The connection felt unquestionable. Instinct, recollection, or something deeper. A reverberation of Rebecca's generosity endured through the cat's. Father Michael made the decision to address the mystery head-on that evening. This time, rather than observing from a distance, he waited until the cat reached its typical location outside the church doors. His voice was just above a whisper as he crouched down and whispered, "Who are you?" The cat tilted its head and met his emerald eyes in a whisper, asking why he was there. For a brief moment, the world appeared to go silent, and Father Michael's breath caught due to the intensity. Father Michael was shocked as the cat approached him and brushed across his outstretched hand. He felt a sense of calm and warmth that he couldn't explain. "You're here for a reason," he whispered. "Because I'm not entirely sure, but perhaps I don't have to." The cat waited for a while before turning and approaching. Father Michael followed Rebecca's cross, his heart racing, and when they arrived at A.L. Cove, the cat sat next to him. Father Michael experienced a profound sensation of the cross's unflinching gaze at that very time. To be clear, the cat was a guardian, a symbol of affection, and more than just a stray. Allegiance that endured throughout time, whether as a result of the cat's choice, fate, faith, or something else beyond human understanding. To commemorate Rebecca's memory, and in doing so, it had united the community in a manner that no sermon could, according to Father. When Michael returned to the rectory that night, the weight of the cat's enigmatic behavior was pressing down on him. He kept thinking about the little creature sitting outside the church doors, its silent vigil, reflecting the unwavering faith of the congregation, why it had selected the church as its sanctuary, and what was it waiting for. His mind was racing with questions as he sat at his desk, gazing at his Bible, unable to concentrate on the sermon he had to. So the next morning, Father Michael talked to Maria, the parish's longtime housekeeper, about his feelings. A perceptive woman with a keen sense of empathy was known for her ability to comprehend both humans and animals in ways that frequently take people by surprise. She paid close attention as the priest explained the cat's behavior and the strange circumstances surrounding its arrival. "I've also observed it," and Maria acknowledged, stirring a pot of soup on the stove. "Its eyes have a purpose, Father, almost as if it knows, unlike other strays." Father Michael nodded, his brow furrowed. "But what may it be that we don't know? Every time I try to approach it, it rushes away, showing no signs of trust. Maybe animals trust actions more than words." Maria laughed softly. "You must be kind to it without anticipating anything in return. Give it food, drink, or anything else to let it know that you value it." Safe location. Following her counsel to heart, Father Michael placed a tiny plate of. He saw from a distance that evening as the cat cautiously approached its food and drink near the church doors. Hesitant and cautious movements, but after a protracted period of hesitancy, it started to eat, occasionally glancing at the vacant doorway as if it were waiting for someone to come out once it was done. With a gentle sigh that pulled at the priest's heart over the tree, it retreated to its typical location beneath it and curled up. Father Michael continued to provide for the cat over the following few days. With each tiny act of care was helping him to comprehend its silent vigil. But the more he watched, the more questions he had. So, what or who was it? And why did the cat appear to be so obsessed with the church? While waiting for Maria, the rational voice recommended researching the church's recent past. Occasionally, she handed him a stack of ancient parish documents and said, "The answers we seek are right in front of us. Maybe this tiny one is." As Father Michael dug through the documents, he started to unearth tales of someone who had previously sought comfort here. Among those whose lives had profoundly touched the church, Amelia Rivera stood out as a devout. Amelia, a parishioner who had died 6 months prior, was well known for her affection for animals and frequently brought finding homes after straying to the church. Could the cat be one of hers? The time, Father Michael, it seemed too coincidence to overlook, motivated by this prospect, contacted Amelia's surviving family members. Her grandson Daniel was the first person to reply. Daniel's voice quivered with passion as the priest explained the cat and its behavior. He claimed that Lily, who looks like her, was my grandmother's cat after she passed away. We assumed Lily had vanished because of good Father Michael's heartache. The revelation, it appears like she has been waiting here for a long time. Maybe she is looking for someone or something. In the hopes of seeing the cat again, Daniel consented to go to the chapel the following day. He brought a tiny bag with him, with sweets and a picture of Amelia with Lily in her lap. The similarity was obvious, but as they go closer, Lily stayed evasive at the chapel, running away when she saw the stranger she. Daniel lamented, "I don't recognize you anymore," as he saw the cat vanish into. Father Michael of the Shadows put a comforting hand on his shoulder and said, "Sometimes trust takes time, so let's give." Despite the setback, Daniel came back every day to provide her the space she needs while sitting. Lily approached her gently, but steadily while holding snacks close to the church doors and speaking softly. Careful actions that demonstrated the connection that persisted between them one night as the sun set below the. Daniel mumbled tears as horizon finally let him touch her, her silken fur quivering beneath his palm, running down his cheeks, recalling that Father Michael's reunion was a poignant reminder of the bonds that bind all living things together. But even as he celebrated the advancements, he couldn't get rid of the impression that Lily's vigil was more than just an act of devotion because of what they had done. In the days after Father's death, there was a riddle to solve that extended beyond the cat's relationship with her deceased owner. Every evening as the church bells sounded out, Michael noticed a pattern in Lily's behavior. She would leave her position and approach the altar, keeping her eyes focused on a specific stained glass window that showed. The patron saint of animals, Saint Francis of Assisi, is seen cradling a tiny bird in his hands. It was a lovely work, but Father Michael found it strange. Curious, he started to investigate the window's past in the hopes of finding a hint that could clarify Lily's fascination with what he found. "I was shocked and profoundly touched by what had brought the cat here and what it had to do with." As Father Michael read the story more closely, he saw that Lily's presence was what the saint in the glass was representing. Was not a coincidence. Rather, Father Michael's story marked the start of something much bigger than any of them had anticipated. An intriguing story emerged from the stained glass windows investigation. It had been commissioned decades prior by. It was given in remembrance of her son Timothy by a parishioner named Eleanor Marquez, who was a kind-hearted, a young man who has a reputation for saving stray animals and helping them recover. Sadly, he had died young, and Elena had used the window to commemorate his legacy as Father Michael. While looking through the old church files, he discovered that Timothy's and Amelia's stories were remarkably similar. Being devoted to doing good deeds and taking care of the weak, might there be a spiritual relationship between the two? And if so, how did Lily contribute to the story as it developed during the discovery, expanded the enigma, and presented further difficulties? But Lily's devotion to the church appeared to have deeper roots. Deeper than her relationship with Amelia, or her fascination with the window every night when the light and bells rung. Lily would sit up straight, her eyes fixed on the altar as the stained glass glowed in a rainbow of hues, as if she were anticipating a sign or someone Maria had ever mentioned. The regularity may have more to do with the cat's behavior than spirituality, as animals are drawn to patterns, she said. Perhaps the light or the bells bring back memories of her father when she folds her arms. Although he wasn't persuaded, Michael nodded since Lily's focus seemed too intentional and focused to be. He murmured softly, "I can feel it," dismissing it as a simple reaction to stimuli. Meanwhile, Daniel kept going to see Lily every day, getting closer to her every day, even though their relationship was getting stronger. Told Father Michael that he was having trouble with guilt about leaving her. He claimed that one day his voice full of sadness, "I should have taken her in after Grandma died, but instead I let her wonder why you didn't." Michael persuaded her father that Lily was here for a reason, but she left him. Led her to this chapel as part of a larger scheme, but the complications weren't limited to Daniel's guilt. As word of the odd vigil spread, some curious bystanders came to the chapel, came out of genuine curiosity to see how others behaved less respectfully than Father Michael had explained. One evening, a bunch of adolescents arrived, using the situation as a spectacle, as they attempted to entice Lily out of hiding with loud calls and flashing cameras. Father Michael's laughter reverberated throughout the churchyard. "This is a sacred place," he stated, interrupting the gathering with a stern approach. Sternly, "And please be respectful. That cat isn't here for your amusement." Father Michael was shocked by the experience, even if the teenagers left grudgingly. How could he protect Lily and still? He chose to talk to the woman, giving her the freedom to pursue whatever reason had brought her to the chapel. The parish council is looking for a solution that strikes a compromise between the community's rising interest and the cat's safety. There were differing views at the meeting, and some council members proposed creating a special space for Lily away from the main entrance to avoid disruptions, while some contended that the cat's presence was advantageous as it attracted more guests too. One council member stated that it's not just about the cat, and that the church is rekindling interest in its mission and heritage. Perhaps this is a chance to express our faith, Father Michael, as others are looking for significance in her narrative. He gave the concept considerable thought, acknowledging that Lily's presence had generated interest and involvement that he didn't want. In order to capitalize on her tale, the council ultimately decided to erect a modest, inconspicuous shelter close to the church. Doors that gave Lily a secure area, while keeping her ties to the church intact while the shelter was constructed another. A local animal rescue group became involved after learning about Lily, reached out to Father Michael with the idea that they would like to move the cat to their institution, claiming that it would be safer and more regulated, even though it appeared that noble Father Michael was concerned about. Lily isn't just any stray, he clarified during a heated argument, removing her from the location she had designated as her haven. Phone conversation with the director of the rescue group. She has a purpose here that extends beyond what is first apparent. Despite his skepticism, the director consented to go to the church and observe Lily's behavior in person when she got there. She was astounded by the cat's serene disposition and the way she appeared to move deliberately, as if she really belonged. And after an hour of observation, the director agreed. You might be correct, she acknowledged that she has a unique quality, but assured me that you would protect her, just as Father Michael had promised. A fresh idea started to form in his head. What if Lily wasn't merely waiting for someone, but really guiding them? Presence was intended to lead people to a more profound comprehension of healing or faith compassion. The questions grew more pressing when the initial rumors of a miracle started to spread among the parishioners, according to one woman. After praying close to Lily, she discovered surprising clarity on a challenging choice. Another person mentioned the cat's presence had provided her comfort during a period of intense sorrow, but Father Michael was hesitant to categorize these encounters as heavenly. He couldn't ignore the increasing feeling that Lily's watch was a part of something remarkable, but the enigma of what or who Lily was waiting for, and how would the response influence Lily's presence at the church and the lives of those who had come to look after her throughout the course of the weeks, kept the town captivated, with many visitors kneeling in. Some people placed modest offerings, candles, notes of thanks, and even bowls of food near her refuge during solitary meditation, as if, for Father Michael, Lily served as a conduit for their anxieties and hopes, and their developing respect for the cat brought both. I'm not sure if this is dedication or desperation, but I feel inspired and uneasy. Told Maria that one evening while they were watching Lily from the window of the rectory, the cat was seated in her typical position. Maria, ever practical, shrugged while her gaze remained locked on the stained glass window that showed St. Francis holding animals. If Lily gives them comfort, isn't that a good thing? Father Michael agreed. People find religion in different ways. However, I'm concerned about what would happen if their expectations were misguided. What if we're giving something meaning? Maria inclined her head in consideration of his remarks, but she didn't entirely grasp. Her remarks stuck with Father, demonstrating what faith is, trusting in things we cannot explain. Michael saw Daniel sitting in the back pew as he got ready for the evening service, his shoulders slumped in his. Father Michael came up to him after the service, his face drawn with concern. Daniel, are you okay? You seem distressed. Daniel was hesitant at first. It's Lily, responding to his low voice. I can't stop wondering what brought her here, regarding all of her experiences, and I can't help but wonder if I'm the cause of her being trapped. When Father Michael put a comforting hand on Daniel's shoulder, neglect made her clutch to something else. Lily isn't. It's not your fault that you took care of her in the first place. She chose to come here for whatever reason. You were aware that Daniel nodded, but his face remained puzzled. I want to take her home, he said, but the priest's heart aches for the priest. But I'm afraid, what if she doesn't want to go? What if I'm no longer enough for her? Daniel stated, You're more than enough, young man vulnerability. But perhaps this isn't about removing Lily from. Perhaps it's about figuring out how to share her journey with the church. The chat sowed a seed in Daniel's. Though he was unsure of its meaning at the time, he spent the days that followed, spending more time at the church talking to the parishioners who had been moved by Lily's presence and watching her. Realized how deeply the cat had ingrained itself into their lives as a silent representation of resiliency and hope. However, the difficulties persisted, and one afternoon Father Michael was surprised by Elena Marquez's granddaughter Caroline, a professional historian, had been conducting research. When she discovered references to the stained glass window and the church where it was located, she thought of her grandmother's life. As they stood in the nave, my grandmother Caroline described how much this place meant to her. She thought that Timothy's love of animals allowed his spirit to endure. So when I learned about the sea, I had to visit, as if. When she noticed Caroline coming, she gingerly knelt down in front of her. She stroked the cat's fur tenderly, her eyes welling with tears, as if she remembered to whisper. Father Michael observed the exchange with wonder and interest, wondering if Lily's presence was actually related. The prospect sparked a deep-seated feeling in Timothy's legacy that the cat's vigil was not just. Caroline's presence added a new level of intricacy to the problem, which was previously a mystery. Declared her intention to record Lily's story for her studies, a request that both delighted and alarmed Father. Although Michael was grateful for the chance to pay tribute to Timothy, he was concerned about the consequences of making Lily's trip a show for the public. Her tale is already motivational. When he expressed his worries, Caroline countered, "Why not share it on a broader scale? It may bring even more." Father Michael's support for the church and the community is conflicted between the risks and the possible rewards. "Don't want her to lose what makes her unique," he stated. "Lily is a soul with her own soul, not a symbol for us to take advantage of." Caroline nodded thoughtfully, suggesting that perhaps that is the tale we should share, not only about her significance to us, but also about what. As Father Michael considered what she was teaching us about faith and connection, a new issue emerged. After learning about Lily, a reporter from a nearby television station wanted to tell her tale in a future program. While the publicity would provide the church with much-needed funding, it also ran the risk of attracting more unwelcome guests, and Daniel, who had been listening to the conversation, might interrupt Lily's silent vigil if we tell her story. We must do it correctly. It's about everything, not just Lily. Father Mike acknowledged that she had provided the love, optimism, and faith that people need to see in this place. But he chose to permit the reporter to visit under stringent guidelines, making sure that Lily's. As the interview was set, his health remained his first concern, and he prayed for direction, believing that the reality of. On the day of the reporter's arrival, Lily's journey would shine through, bringing with it a mixture of exhilaration and, with anxiety, the little crew carefully set up their cameras at the chapel under the guidance of parishioners assembled to observe the sanctuary's sanctity after Father Michael insisted that it be respected. I was excited to see how Lily's tale will be conveyed, since she seemed genuine. Kept her cool and sat close to the altar, her amber eyes quietly witnessing the chaos. The lead reporter, with a professional demeanor and a notebook in hand, a woman named Grace Andrews approached Father Michael. "It's not every day we come," Grace said, nodding at Lily. "She's amazing. I want to make sure that we do justice when we come across a story like this." Father Michael valued her earnestness, but Lily isn't. The interview started with him telling a narrative about how she's a presence and has united people in ways I can't fully articulate. Grace inquired about Lily's arrival and her influence on the church, and community. Father Michael replied by sharing the current, a well-known story of a stray cat finding safety and turning into a symbol of hope. Yet, as the discussion progressed, Grace posed a question that surprised him. "Do you believe Lily is present here?" "Father Michael, is it just a coincidence, or is there anything divine about it?" He had thought about this question innumerable times, and he paused, his mind racing, but never made his results known in public. Faith frequently flourishes in the unexplained. He carefully responded when asked if whether Lily is divine or not. "I think there's a reason she's here." As the interview went on, Lily emerged as the focal point. The camera team recorded her every motion, including her head tilt and serene stance. Grace told the narrative with sincere sincerity while she looked around the room, interjecting stories from parishioners who had found comfort in Lily's company. One such story was told by an older woman named Agnes, who spoke movingly about how Lily had provided her some consolation during a trying period. "Last year, I lost my spouse," and Agnes revealed why her voice was shaking. "It felt good to have Lily here and know that I wasn't alone." Grace's eyes softened as she heard tales like, "Yours are what makes this so special," she remarked, adding that Lily is more than just a cat. Bridge between individuals and their faith. But as the movie came to an end, a new issue surfaced: a man in a warren. He stood at the outskirts of the gathering, staring at Lily. Father Michael saw him and came over. The priest said in a friendly tone, "Can I help you?" The man hesitated. "I believe I know this cat," he added in a harsh but sincere voice before he spoke. "Her name was Clementine, and she looked exactly like one I had." Father Michael felt cold. "Are you?" He looked at Lily Scheck, who had been here for months, and asked, "Do you know where she is?" Perhaps it was the man's hesitant nod. "I lost her over a year ago, and I thought she was gone forever, but she seems to have returned to something significant here, and the revelation adds another level of complication." If the man's assertion was accurate, it brought up issues regarding Lily's path and her relationship with the church father. Even though he couldn't ignore the uneasiness that was beginning to settle in his chest that evening, Michael pledged to look into it more. Daniel asked, his voice tinged with suspicion, "What if the man is telling the truth?" Father Michael and Daniel talked about the stranger's assertion. Fear, what if Lily is indeed his? Father Michael acknowledged that it's possible, but it doesn't alter what she has contributed to this place. She has impacted countless lives here, including yours, mine, and everyone else's. Handle this care with caution. The next day, Father Michael contacted the individual, whose identity was disclosed as. Lily's possible past was pieced together by Arthur, who also talked of a cherished cat that had been his companion, who provided consolation and company when he had little else during a trying time in his life. Arthur's voice broke as he added, "She was my light. When I lost her, I felt as though I." Father Michael listened to Arthur's account with great interest, but he still had concerns about how had. As they conversed, Arthur questioned Lily why she had stayed at the chapel. Long after their talk was over, Father Michael continued to wonder if she was my. "Do you believe, Clementine, that she came here for a cause that evening?" Father Michael was looking from the sanctuary. Lily's serene demeanor as she lay close to the altar seemed to contain a response he was still unable to understand. "If you're, why are you here, Clementine?" he asked, echoing in the silence. "What are you trying to show us?" Unresolved yet significant, Arthur's entrance and the potential for Lily's background had increased the mystery, leaving. The disclosure caused Father Michael to question whether the cat's journey was far more complicated than he had ever thought. Words of concern and interest circulated around the church as a result of Arthur's possible relationship with Lily. Swiftly, and views differed greatly. Some believed it to be a miracle affirmation of Lily's special mission, while others, concerned that she would leave the church as a result. Father Michael was caught between his responsibilities as a spiritual leader and his developing bond with Lily. He was aware that it was morally right to confirm Arthur's assertion. However, the prospect of losing her troubled him, and during the following service, Father Michael spoke to the Lily's being here has been a blessing to us all, as the congregation has been able to immediately sense the undertone of uneasiness. Started off steadily, but we need to think about what it may be if she really belongs to someone who loved her and lost her. Indicates that our faith instructs us to behave honorably and compassionately even when it's. Surprisingly, the parishioners whispered to one another while looking at Agnes, the old woman who had shared. Lily may have come from somewhere else, but she's found her home here, according to her account with the reporter who stood up to her father. Others nodded in agreement that it wasn't necessary to send her away right away, but Robert, a younger man, raised his hand to speak. He replied in a respectful tone, adding, "I know how we all feel about Lily, but if..." Father Michael nodded. "You're both her owner and Arthur. Don't we owe it to him and to her to explore the truth?" "Yes, so we'll go cautiously. I've asked Arthur to bring any pictures or documents he may have of his pet, and I'll..." consult a veterinarian to see whether Lily could be microchipped that week. Arthur came back with a used record of pictures that featured a younger Lily sitting on a shabby couch with her distinctive amber eyes, playing with a ball of yarn while cuddled up on Arthur's lap. The evidence was strong, but not conclusive, Father. With Daniel's assistance, Michael made arrangements for Lily to be taken to the clinic for an examination by a nearby veterinarian. When the veterinarian checked her for a microchip, they were shocked to find one, but it wasn't registered. The veterinarian clarified that it's uncommon for people to occasionally neglect to register the chip or the information gets lost over time, but we do know that she had a previous owner. Although revelation compounded the enigma and provided no definitive solutions, Arthur persisted in his conviction that Lily was. Father Michael was unable to overlook the connection she had made with the church and its community despite his Clementine. Meanwhile, the tale of Lily's possible beginnings started to garner interest outside of Grace Andrews' congregation. Father Michael was contacted by the reporter to inquire about the progress of the story, and this new development really enhances it. Depth, she stated that G is now about the relationships we make and what home truly is, not just about a stray cat. Indicates that Father Michael found resonance in Grace's viewpoint and understood that Lily's, regardless of its ultimate destination, the journey served as a monument to the strength of love and resiliency in these times. As time went on, Arthur started to spend more time at the church, either loitering in the back or sitting silently during services. Lily frequently wandered the courtyard where he was present, and some people had mixed emotions. While some parishioners accepted Arthur as another soul seeking comfort one day, others were suspicious of his motives. Arthur asked Daniel, who was caring for the church garden, if she remembered me. His voice was colored with. Daniel was uncertain, and he carefully considered whether to say Lily or Clementine. Has endured a lot, but now that she's here and has established herself, perhaps that's what really counts, Arthur. Nodding thoughtfully, he said, I just needed to know she's okay. I don't want to take her away if she's happy here. Later, Daniel told Father Michael about the encounter, and he felt hopeful that there could be a way to honor. The turning point for Lily's involvement in the church and Arthur's relationship with her occurred one evening. Service, Lily surprised everyone by approaching Arthur for the first time as he was sitting peacefully in the pews. The assembly silently observed her slow, careful movements as, curling up against his side, Lily jumped onto the bench next to him. Arthur's eyes welled with emotions as he caressed her fur and said, It's her, in a barely heard murmur that she remembered. The moment highlighted the dilemma and validated Arthur's relationship with Lily. It was both lovely and bittersweet. Father Michael watched them all from the pulpit, his heart heavy with the decision that would have to be made following the. Father Michael called a meeting with Arthur, Daniel, and several important parishioners to talk about the way forward. It's evident that you and Lily have a strong bond that dates back to the beginning, but it's also evident that she has grown to be an essential component of. Perhaps there is a way to celebrate both in this society. Arthur glanced around the room, his eyes softening as he saw the affection. He remarked, I don't want to disturb what she's found here, with worry on the faces of those who had come to look for Lily. Together, the ideas generated a surge of inspiration and relief, and perhaps I can join in as well. Figuring out how to include Arthur in church activities so that he can get back in touch with Lily without keeping her. Function as a source of consolation and solidarity. And by night's end, they had a strategy. One who would respect Lily's history, embrace her present, and mold her future to represent their greatest qualities. In the days that followed the arrangement, it appeared that faith and compassion were working, and Arthur became a regular presence. Lily always attends church services with the congregation and volunteers to help Daniel with the garden. Both the comfort of Arthur's presence and the affection she received seemed to foster the independent spirit obtained from every member of the church. Nonetheless, a tiny but vociferous group did not all express satisfaction with this result. Inside, the church started to doubt Father Michael's choice to include Arthur in their close-knit. At a council meeting we've held, a parishioner questioned, what if he decides to take her away? Can we really risk losing that unique something surrounding Lily? Father Michael acknowledged their worries, but reminded. He firmly stated, this church is a place of inclusivity and compassion, one of its tenets. If we turn to, despite his assurances, The conflict arises when we turn away someone who is looking for connection. How can we profess to live out our faith? As the narrative simmered within the crowd, Grace Andrews, who had been paying close attention, saw I sense that there is some anger in the community because she contacted Father Michael following the service. Father Michael groaned. Do you think this situation with Arthur might divide the congregation? Admitted, but I think we can work it out because Lily has united us in ways I never thought possible. And I have faith in that harmony would triumph as the church got ready for its yearly feast day celebration, which attracted guests from. Tensions in the town reached a peak during a meeting to finalize the event plans. Two parishioners got into a furious argument with one side that Lily should continue to serve as the church's communal icon, but the other believed that Arthur's presence may potentially. When Father Michael heard about that identity, he realized he couldn't put off dealing with the matter any longer. He organized a special gathering that evening and invited everyone in the congregation to freely express their opinions in the room. Arthur sat silently in the back, clearly uncomfortable, as if the air were heavy with anticipation. Her serene manner stood in sharp contrast to the stress as she sat on a window ledge, aware of the seriousness of the situation. I've heard your worries in the room, Father Michael said steadily. Realize that Lily is now more than simply a stray cat at this church. She is a representation of love, tenacity, and togetherness. But we must never forget that our faith requires us to show the same compassion and love to everyone, including Margaret, a parishioner, rose to her feet, her voice trembling with passion. We adore Lily's father, but we fear losing her since she has made us so happy. What if Arthur removes her? Arthur Rose's attitude would be earnest. I never intended to cause any. I came here because I missed her, because she was my Clementine, he said, causing difficulty. However, now that she has discovered something lovely here, I don't want to take it away. All I want is to share in it. The room fell silent for a time as the words lingered, and then Agnes, speaking up, was the elderly parishioner who had initially told the reporter Lily's story. Perhaps Lily is here to teach us something because, in spite of her years of sharing and letting go, she spoke in a forceful voice. She's taught us how to be better, so perhaps it's time we show each other that instead of hanging on to it too tightly. Father Michael grinned and expressed his faith as the room gradually filled with murmurs of agreement, and the tension started to ease. The following morning, while the feast day preparations were underway, the congregation's potential for development was underlined. Full swing, something unforeseen occurred. Lily vanished, and panic swiftly spread as parishioners called her name and looked around her customary haunts as they searched the church grounds, and Arthur and Daniel joined them. Daniel's voice was taut with concern as he remarked, "Search their worry evidently. Sheck never wandered off like this before." Michael made an effort to maintain his composure, but he became uneasy when he noticed the vacant courtyard where Lily frequently lounged. The joyous ambience of the feast day gave way to a solemn one by the evening when she was nowhere to be seen. Arthur knelt silently in the back of the church with his hands clenched tightly as the company gathered there to pray for Lily's safe return. Just as Father Michael was ready to go, he muttered, "Please, if she's out there, let her find her way back." The big oak doors creaked open as the vigil came to an end, and I stood in the entryway. Lily was in silhouette as the light faded, moving slowly down the aisle with a purposeful clutch. The assembly gasped when they saw the small, worn thing in Lily's mouth, a locket. The locket was dropped at Arthur's feet, and Arthur snatched it up with shaking hands. It was my wife's. She used to wear it all the time, and I thought it was lost forever, he remarked in a voice choking with sorrow. Father Michael, Lily's journey has always been about more than we realized, he remarked quietly as he went forward, his heart swelled with wonder. Maybe this is her way of providing closure for everyone in the church, not just for you, Arthur. Lily was crying uncontrollably as Arthur held the locket close. The finding of the locket signaled a turning point as she cuddled up next to him, her amber eyes gleaming with a silent wisdom. It was obvious that Lily had made the decision to belong to everyone, and the question of who she belonged to was no longer relevant. The crowd experienced a surge of emotion upon learning about the locket, which united them in a way that wasn't simply an object. It was something that hadn't been felt since Lily initially emerged. a link between Arthur's history and the church's current state, signifying the reconciliation and healing Lily had unwittingly brought to everyone. The atmosphere was muted as the feast day recommenced beneath the illumination of the twilight lanterns, although, hopefully, the tables were laden with food, and the courtyard was filled with the sound of gentle laughter and discussion. There was still concern about what this moment would imply for Arthur, Lily, and Father. With the locket in his hand, Arthur sat silently at the edge of the celebrations in the church community. Michael came over and pulled up a chair next to him. It looks like Lily had one last gift to give, he added in a kind tone, nodded while keeping his eyes on my wife's little piece of jewelry. I gave it to Rebecca as a gift on our anniversary years ago after she died away. Father Michael thought it was gone, like so many other things, but now it's back. Arthur looked up with moist eyes, which none of us could have predicted. Do you believe this is an indication that? I believe Lily has something that I need to let go of, but perhaps I've been clutching onto the wrong things. Demonstrated to us all that love transforms rather than vanishes, Father Michael stated softly. Perhaps Lily's journey here served as a reminder that what you shared with Rebecca is still with you. In the meantime, the parishioners started to consider how they felt about Arthur and Lily Grace Andrews, who had. I've been one of the most doubtful people to approach Clara, the young lady who frequently took care of Lily. Grace was apprehensive to take Lily away after hearing Arthur's words during the meeting, but she eventually decided to. Clara, who wanted to be a part of her life, grinned and brushed a lock of hair away. I believe Lily has taught us all a lesson in sharing love. She is here for everyone in her own unique way and doesn't belong to any one of us. Started spreading across the congregation as the feast neared its peak, and Father Michael took the stage to speak to the assembly, his voice piercing the mutter of the audience. We are celebrating not only this church and our community tonight, but he mentioned the journey we've all taken together and how Lily helped us find love when we needed her most. He looked at Arthur, who acknowledged the healing and connection Arthur's narrative had with a small nod. Reminded us that love is a gift we give to one another rather than a possession. And as we go forward, I think it's time. The crowd erupted in cheers of renewed unity as we fully embraced what Lily had taught us. Despite the weight of emotion, Arthur maintained a straight stance and responded, "Thank you," in a steady but tremulous voice, "for allowing me to participate. I'm not sure where I'll go from here, but I'm confident that I'll carry this place and all of you with me." As though recognizing the significance of the event, leaped elegantly onto the table where Father Michael got up, and she meowed softly in satisfaction as her amber eyes scanned. It appeared to the gathering that she was endorsing the choice taken that evening following the feast. Had concluded, and the churchyard became silent. Arthur stayed close to the stairs where Lily was sitting. "I never imagined I'd find serenity again," he whispered quietly, as her head rested lightly on his knee next to him. "But somehow you and Father Michael joined them here, and the cool night air with its subtle lavender aroma brought it back to me. From the garden, peace finds us when we least expect it," he added, adding that it can occasionally take the form of a tiny, resolute animal with fur and plenty of affection to offer. Arthur laughed, the sound carrying a blend of, with both excitement and sadness. "I believe it's time for me to move on." He advised me to remember Rebecca by not clinging to. Father Michael put a comforting hand on Arthur's shoulder and said, "The past, but by living as she would have wanted, and realize that, like Lily, you'll always have a place here, Arthur," as he got ready to depart the following day. As the congregation gathered to bid him farewell, he bent down to give Lily one final petting. His touch was tender and full of appreciation. Lily nuzzled his fingers, her amber eyes full of understanding, and thanked him for all. He murmured, "Take care of them, okay?" It was a heartbreaking farewell, but it also held the hope of Arthur's recovery and fresh starts for the church. And the day following Arthur's passionate farewell was quiet for Lily, but it was a feast of energy for the church community. Had diminished, leaving a sense of introspection and calm, and individuals went about their daily lives with a revitalized feeling of purpose. Their hearts were lighter, but they were still filled with doubts regarding the true meaning of Lily's presence. Even if Arthur had, his tale persisted, woven into the fabric of their everyday existence. But Father Michael couldn't get rid of a persistent notion. So he stood in his small study and looked out the window at the Lily was sitting in the church garden where she used to play, enjoying the morning sun. Her serene manner was a dramatic contrast. As a counterpoint to the chaotic sequence of events she had unintentionally initiated, he opened a little leather-bound journal, where he frequently wrote down his ideas and prayers. As he turned the pages, he came upon a recent post. What does? This little creature has greatly benefited our community, but what is her purpose? It means that the Lord wrote it. The door creaked open in this vast scheme, which made it easier for me to see, and Clara in with a tray filled with tea and cookies. You've been thinking a lot this morning, Father, she observed, setting the tray on his desk, still thinking about Lily. Father Michael grinned a little and took a. Although she is United States, she has been a mystery since the beginning, hasn't she? Clara took a chair across from him and nodded in ways I couldn't have predicted. Do you think Arthur will return at some point? Father Michael asked. People like Arthur remember the locations and people who have had a profound impact on them. But I also believe that his journey isn't ended yet, just as ours with Lily wasn't either. A sudden disturbance cut off their discourse. Outside, a chorus of voices became more audible, blending with the distinct sound of kids giggling. Clara and Father Michael looked at one another inquisitively before leaving to check what was going on in. Lily the cat was sitting on the edge of the fountain in the courtyard, and a few parishioners had gathered around her. She watched the enthusiastic gathering with her tail flickering idly, but it wasn't just her. It was her holding a fragile object in her mouth that had created the commotion. A little cross was delicately crafted at the end of a gold chain that hung from her teeth and glinted in the sunlight. As Father Michael came forward with his heart, the congregation erupted in detailed and distinctly ancient gasps. He inquired in a quiet, awe-filled voice, "Where did she find that?" While we were playing in the garden, a boy named Samuel came forward and dug it up. She just began excavating close to the ancient oak tree. Father Michael delicately removed the crucifix from Lily's mouth and gave it a critical inspection. It had an inscription on the back that said, "To my beloved forever in faith," and the craftsmanship was exquisite. Clara whispered gently, her eyes wide, "Belonged to someone who must have treasured it greatly." The revelation caused a stir in the community, and many recalled tales passed down through generations regarding a relic lost during a period of severe hardship and a secret riches buried close to the church grounds. Unrest caused some to reject the stories as folklore, but now that the cross is in hand, Father Michael turned to the group and told them not to draw hasty conclusions because those stories seem to take on a new life. It appears Lily has discovered something important. We'll look at it more, and maybe this finding will bring. Over the following few days, the church became a center of activity for parishioners who were even more understanding of her role. And historians convened to examine the cross and the region where Lily had been enjoying the story, which gradually gained popularity and attracted tourists from nearby towns who wanted to see the. Despite the increasing attention, the enigmatic cat, and the riches she had discovered, Lily was unconcerned and carried on with her custom of curling up and welcoming churchgoers in her favorite pew, and sometimes vanishing for hours at a time before coming back with a renewed feeling of purpose. It was as though she recognized the seriousness of what she was doing and was subtly leading the community towards something bigger. The air was chilly and the stars were sparkling as Father Michael stood in the yard where the cross had been discovered that evening. Lily was sitting next to him overhead, her gaze focused on the horizon. "You've done something amazing," he remarked, his voice full of awe. "You've demonstrated to us that even the tiniest creatures can convey the most important points." And as he talked, he experienced a profound sensation of calm, as if the solutions he had been looking for were at last within his grasp. Lily's mission extended beyond merely finding artifacts or bridging the past with the present. It was about educating the populace to see past appearances in order to discover significance in the seemingly routine, and to treasure the bonds that united them. Father Michael knelt next to her, He put a soft hand on her back and said, "Thank you, Lily, for reminding us of what really matters." Even if the occasion was peaceful, it had an indisputable weight. The scene was prepared for a revelation, that would not only resolve unanswered issues, but also establish. The following Sunday, the church was packed with more people than ever before, demonstrating Lily's position at the center of the congregation. Of the cross and Lily's ostensibly miraculous discovery had attracted tourists from all directions, who assembled in the pews, their voices low in expectation, the air humming with interest and respect as Father. As Michael was ready to speak, Lily sat in her normal location close to the altar, her serene demeanor. Her emerald eyes seemed to know that this was a momentous occasion, anchoring the energy in the room. Father Michael moved forward after looking across the gathering, as though she were silently thanking everyone who had arrived. The sunshine shining through the stained glass windows lit the golden cross as he held it in his hands. My dear friends, exquisite details create lovely patterns on the walls. He spoke steadily at first, but with a lot of emotion. For many of you, it is a day of introspection and revelation. Since she first showed up on our steps, Lily, our unexpected companion, has been a source of both mystery and solace. And she has now guided us to something remarkable. He raised the cross so that it is clearly visible to everybody. Whispers spread like a ripple this cross as gasps reverberated across the crowd. Discovered by Lily is a representation of trust and love in addition to being a lovely relic. In relationship ideals that, after more research, define our community. We have learned that this cross belonged to a family who came here for refuge during a very trying time, was believed to be lost forever, a treasure buried in memory and in earth. Father Michael stopped looking. Lily brought it back to us after sweeping the room, maybe to remind us of faith's tenacity, or to demonstrate to us that even the tiniest deeds have deep significance. A silent nod of agreement permeated the. As I clutched this, members of the church moved closer, listening to what he said. Father Michael went on, and I was reminded of another treasure that we frequently overlook in recent times. I never thought that Lily's presence would bring us together, but her acts have piqued Joy's interest and compassion. She has served as a reminder of the value of solidarity and the impact that modest, meaningful actions can have. He turned his. Observe Lily, who was sitting calmly with her tail coiled around her. Lily is not. Despite being a stray cat, she serves as a guide, a messenger, and possibly even a miracle, shown to us that we are more able to connect, love, and be nice than we frequently realize. Tears looked in many people's eyes as Father Michael's remarks struck a deep chord. The room was filled with the weight of his message, with a feeling of unity, and then, as though on cue, something unexpected occurred. The congregation watched as Lily rose and made her way to the altar, her movements light but purposeful. She paused before Father Michael, looking up at him with a seemingly knowing gaze. "What is it, Lily?" Father Michael inquired quietly as he knelt next to her and placed the cross lightly on the floor between them. Lily's words was barely audible as she extended her hand and delicately touched the cross before looking at the congregation. It seemed as though she was urging them to come forward and participate in the narrative. She had discovered that Clara was stirred by her unspoken invitation and was the first to approach, kneeling next to Father Michael. And Lily put her palm over the cross and said, "Thank you," in a whisper, trembling for reminding us of the important things one by one as men followed. Each woman and kid came to the altar with hearts full of thanks, and they shared smiles united by the cross, mumbled prayers, and touched it in amazement. Father Michael stood raising the cross as the final person went back to their seat, a scene Lily had planned. He reiterated that this is more than just a remnant, and that it is evidence of the enduring power of love and faith, and it serves as a reminder that there are always miracles around us, no matter how tiny. Lily was sitting calmly at the fringe of the congregation when they burst into applause, their cheers mingling with tears and laughter. After the service, the altar appeared satisfied that her mission had been accomplished, remained, telling stories and marveling over what had happened that day. Children played with Lily, while adults whispered to each other. Given the significance of it all, the church, which had previously been a place of silent tradition, had developed into a thriving center of community and relationship as the church father was bathed in a golden glow as the sun set. Lily cuddled up next to Michael, purring softly as he sat on the steps outside and watched families leave. He stroked her fur and remarked, "You've done something amazing, haven't you? You've reminded us of what it means to be human." Lily stared up at him, her green eyes brimming with love and compassion for one another and the beauty in the little things. Father Michael realized then that her appearance had been no coincidence. She had arrived at the church for a purpose, and in the weeks after the historic Sunday, her influence would last for years. The golden cross that Lily discovered was placed in a protective glass, seemingly altering the church's service life forever. Cased next to the altar with a plaque that reads, "Remember to love, faith, and the miracles that bind us together as tourists from neighboring cities and villages." Arrived to witness the cross and hear Lily's story. The church was formerly a little. Worship evolved into a representation of resiliency and hope. Father Michael frequently made jokes about how Lily had inspired. Lily, of course, continued to be a cherished presence, sitting with more people in a few weeks than he had in years. In the evenings, she would greet whomever that passed by on the church steps with her gentle purses and warm presence of children. Loved her, and frequently brought her toys and cookies to the senior congregation members. Derived comfort from her calm company, and many said she possessed a nearly supernatural capacity to know when someone. Clara, who had been experiencing loneliness, found comfort and became one of Lily's closest friends. Goal in planning church activities and telling guests about Lily, who was more than simply a cat, Clara. As the church community got larger, Father Michael reflected on how one stray cat, may be a blessing, had sparked so much change that he started using compassion and unity as themes in his sermons, urging everyone in the church to apply Lily's teachings to their everyday life. During one Sunday service, he said, "It's easy to find miracles in grand gestures, but Lily taught us that even the church accepted the idea that even the smallest deeds of kindness, like providing a warm place to sleep or a moment of attention, may transform lives." Lily was the driving force behind this message, and they launched a community outreach initiative to assist others in need, arranged food drives, gathered money for nearby shelters, and even started a fund to help low-income families. The program was appropriately named Lily's Light, a tribute to medical bills. Father Michael was astounded by the impact of Lily's entrance on the cat that had initiated their metamorphosis. A simple act of feeding someone wrong has evolved into a movement that extended well beyond the church walls. Individuals who had before been strangers now collaborated and were united by a common goal. One night, as Father Michael got ready for bed, he looked at the diary he had been maintaining following Lily's arrival. It was replete with entries detailing the modifications he had seen, the children who had learned about kindness and the people who had found their religion again. He grinned at Lily and the innumerable ways the community had become stronger. "You've accomplished more than I could have imagined, Lily," he murmured quietly, shutting the journal with a feeling of satisfaction. "Father Michael." Lily padded into the room as if on cue and leaped onto the windowsill to look out at the moonlit churchyard. Joined her in admiring the night's serene beauty, reminding us of what really counts, he added. And Father Michael revealed a new project during the church service the following morning, for which I will always be thankful. Would celebrate the power of tiny deeds with an annual ceremony named Lily's Day of Kindness. The first event would feature family-friendly activities, a shelter fundraiser, and the announcement of the storytelling session on Lily's journey was greeted with fervent applause and preparations. Planning the celebration started right away, and on the day of the event, the churchyard was a hive of activity with music, laughter, and the children rushed about with painted faces while grown-ups inhaled the smells of delectable meals, told tales of how Lily had impacted their lives. However, the day's high point was a silent period of contemplation when Father Michael talked about the lessons they had learned and urged everyone to assemble close to the altar with the golden cross. "We might never really get why Lily approached us," he continued, after learning from her. "However, her deeds serve as a reminder that kindness is a language that cuts through all boundaries. We should." As the gathering dispersed, Father Michael observed Lily, trying to speak every day. He had a great sense of calm as she snuggled up beneath the altar, her emerald eyes watching the happy scene. Their lives were eternally altered by their presence, my friends. If this tale of Lily and don't stop here. Tell others about how the church touched your heart and allow it to encourage tiny deeds of kindness in your own neighborhood. Come hear more touching tales of resiliency and empathy. By joining our channel, we can together build a. Click here to discover a world where every heart finds hope and every stray finds a home. Let's continue sharing Lily's light by watching our upcoming story.